At first, the world was created from disorder. All people and monsters lived in chaos. Among them was a girl who prayed fervently to the sun. And the sun god was so impressed by her that he sent her 5 heavenly people, and along with them, the strength to create a country. So this brave and strong girl became a queen, and together with her descendants, with the help of the power granted by God, she built a great country in which people and monsters lived in harmony. The world where the 2 races met was beautiful, and those who inherited the powers of the 5 heavenly people and could display magical abilities were called magicians. With their power, the country became richer and more powerful. Through exchanges with neighboring countries and distant continents, the country in which various species coexisted became the center of the continent. However, at some point, a conflict arose between people and monsters, as a result of which the king destroyed all the monsters. Now most of the monsters have disappeared, and only a few have begun to live secretly among people. Being a snow girl, Sola also lives hiding among people. It's natural for a snow girl to be on snowy slopes. But in a country where people like her are killed, in the eyes of the people she is a monster. That's why she is forced to hide under the name of one influential family. People call her the only remaining daughter of a family of magicians who wield the power of ice, so she never leaves the house or meets anyone. There are rumors among people that she has gone crazy, that her entire family died because of her, and that she doesn't even have magic. So Sola became a secretive girl, surrounded by all sorts of rumors. However, she did not immediately distance herself from all people out of curiosity. She lived in the village, but everyone began to notice that the girl had been living alone for a long time. She even got married to avoid any suspicion. But whenever her husbands discovered that she was a monster, they tried to kill her, and she, too, had to survive. In the end, the girl decided that it was better for her to live alone deep in the mountains. They say that a girl who doesn't know how to use magic went crazy and locked herself in her house. Such rumors appeared. This is how she began to live under the name of Solha, a girl who had reached marriageable age and gone mad. Tochi, the rabbit maid, brought a letter to the mistress after tea, and this was what worried Sola a little. It was a marriage letter, one of many that had arrived recently. He seems so persistent. Should I give in? Solha asked thoughtfully. These marriage letters are not from several people, they are all from one person. He was known as the Prince of the North. Since he was the Prince of the North, he should marry a girl from a noble family. But why it had to be her, Sola wondered. There is no one who does not know this man. Cruel, cold-blooded as if his heart is ice, he guards the border, merciless to enemies and monsters. If he marries her and finds out she's a monster, it will be bad, but it won't happen. The royal palace is a place where there must be a reason for everything, even for giving a flower. It is a world that has its own benefits and its own losses. There must be a reason why the prince wants to marry her, but it is not clear yet. Of course, even if Sola gets married and lives peacefully, she won't be able to remain unnoticed. In a country where life is like walking on new ice, if her identity is revealed by the prince or the royal family, nothing good will come of it. In any case, I can't contact the royal family, Sola replied to the maid, confirming that she was going to refuse him again, even if he begged her on his knees. If it doesn't work out, then he'll just find someone else. Well, she doesn't like it, what can you do? Tochi, where is Chogi? The girl asked, finding only one maid in front of her. And she was stunned when she heard that someone had arrived and Chogi went to check. Who the hell would come to this house in the harsh, snowy mountains, about which there are already so many rumors, except perhaps a lost woodcutter? She ordered the maid to quickly deal with the stranger and send him back, and she herself sat down to wait calmly. And yet this man is very strange. The sun will soon set, and he came here. Chogi, Sola's ferret maid, trembling with fear, asked the uninvited guest why he had come here. The man in front of her, instead of answering, asked if they had received marriage letters. "Go and tell your mistress that the one who will become her future husband has arrived," he said confidently. The prince who defended the northern border was called the Great Northern Prince by the people. His father was the king of this country, and the prince was heir to the throne from birth. But with the sudden death of the king and queen, the ministers wished that the throne should be taken not by the crown prince, but by the king's younger brother. As a result, the crown prince and princess became a thorn in the royal family's side, and no one would have been surprised by their death, but by the grace of their uncle who became king, they saved their lives. Time passed, and when the prince turned 16, the king ordered him to guard the northern border. In this harsh place, where cold prevailed all year round, in the north, teeming with enemies of the country and monsters, at the age of 17, he single-handedly exterminated a lair of such monsters. It would not be an exaggeration to call him the best warrior in the country. Many girls with embarrassed smiles asked if he had defeated another monster and offered to treat him to a cup of tea. "I'll refuse, I don't want to waste my time." The man's answer was always the same. Because of his cold nature, no girl would stay near him. But why is this stern man standing in front of Solhe's house now? The maid asked what to do now, to which the mistress said to send him back. "I can't. If I tell him to come back, I'll definitely die." The girl rushed toward Solha, which made her dumbfounded. Was it really true that her orders weren't being followed? In the end, the owner decided to go out herself, and she loudly wondered what he needed, why he was in such a hurry. "I see you understand how urgent this is." A male voice stopped the girl as soon as she stepped barefoot into the snow. To the surprised exclamation of where he was from, the prince replied that he had been told to wait, but no one had come out, so he went in himself. Sola laughed lightly, silently cursing the stupid maids. One of them should have stopped him, and she answered the guest that it was already late today and suggested that he come another time. "I never received a response to the marriage letter. I came here in person, and you say next time," the man asked hoarsely. The girl laughed again, although in reality his eyes looked like the eyes of a beast. "I'm sorry, but I already gave you the answer," she said. To this, the Prince of the North added that this marriage was the king's order, and her refusal meant disobedience to the king. "Does the king really require you to marry me?" Sola asked. And with a charming smile, she invited His Majesty to meet a girl from a more noble family. Still smiling, Sola offered to escort the guest home, hoping deep down that he would obey and finally leave. "What I said seems funny to you." The man's voice sounded harsh, and his eyes became even more frightening. Sola became scared, but she hoped that she would not die before she was caught. Mustering up all her courage, she calmly replied that she saw no reason why he should marry her. "Aren't there other girls besides her who are more suitable for this? Even for members of the royal family there are laws. If I could marry anyone I wanted, I would have done so long ago, and there would be no such troubles." The prince sighed wearily, and he more gently noted that she was the only one in the north who met the conditions, which to some extent sounded like a compliment, which made her feel awkward. The Prince of the North was interested in something else. Why, despite the fact that it is the king's order, does she refuse the marriage? If he's afraid of getting involved in politics, then he can calm down. They've turned a blind eye to him for a long time, and if he's worried about life after marriage, then he doesn't need anything from her. "Perhaps I don't suit your tastes?" the man asked with a kind of forced calm. And then he added that in his opinion she was not the most enviable bride either. This phrase offended Solha, and she asked again what he was talking about. The northern prince, in his cold manner, began to list the servants. There were only 2 children. "The family is destroyed. There is no thought of its revival, no pride." The prince's head hung down, and he added that she was walking barefoot in the snow. "You may not know, but if you marry me, the rumors that you're crazy will stop," he said ingratiatingly, coming close to the girl. "But if she really is crazy, then nothing can be done about it." Sola froze, realizing everything that had been said. Outwardly, she was calm, but inside she was growing anxious. Finally, she asked the prince to convince her, but he did not immediately understand what she meant. "Shouldn't the one who is in a hurry be able to persuade the other to his point of view?" Solha said. "Convince me and I will marry you." The girl smiled charmingly. The northern prince thought, and the girl continued speaking. "I don't know if you can persuade me, but it looks like today, when we met face to face, will be the last one." Her smile became mocking. On this note, having wished him a good journey, the mistress of the house slammed the gate. "You were kicked out?" the prince's assistant asked, but he was too shocked to say anything. What kind of girl is this? 2 days later, Tochi looked over the fence once again and confirmed that he had come today too. She was worried that the prince would get angry and climb over the wall, since Lady Sola had ordered her not to open the door for him. "Seriously, to worry about something like that?" Sola said loudly, frightening the maids who were trying to peer over the wall with a joint effort. She herself wasn't worried the house had such a high fence that no one could climb over it on their own. From that day on, the prince continued to come every day. During this time, he could have already found another girl. What the hell is he thinking about? No matter how much Sola thinks, there is only one reason why the prince wants to marry her. Because she is from a family that does not have power, since the royal family will never approve of the crown prince marrying someone from an influential family. So he tries to marry someone who won't be able to start a rebellion. Lifting the hem of her dress, the girl climbed to the top of the fence in one leap, continuing to think that there was something else here. How did you get up there? Do you like climbing fences? Questions came from below. Sola shuddered in surprise as he entered and who opened the gate for him. And she was completely finished off by his answer that he had simply climbed over the fence. She couldn't believe that he was able to climb over such a high fence on his own, but the man calmly added that he simply tried, and it worked. Sola was wondering if he was really a man and not a monster when an offer came from below to go down. She shuddered again, agreeing, but in her heart she had no idea how to do this because she always descended with the help of magic. She hadn't paid attention before, but the fence was higher than she thought, and if she jumped, she would definitely break something. The prince asked if she could come down, and Sola tensed. The girl closed her eyes, sent everything to hell, and rushed forward. But there was no fall strong arms caught her. Sola became embarrassed and blushed, feeling her heart pounding wildly. "Why are you jumping as if you were diving into the sea? Is this your first time or something?" the prince asked while the girl was shyly thanking him, and the next moment, as if nothing had happened, he suggested returning to their conversation. "I'm absolutely no good at persuasion, but in exchange I can give you what you want," the man offered. Sola asked if that was all she wanted, and in response, she heard that it was all within reason. And since he was a prince, he could even restore her family's name. But the girl was interested in something else, and he turned his attention to her. "Why do you really want to marry me?" the girl asked sincerely. It's not at all beneficial for him. The prince didn't immediately find what to answer, but then logically noted that the less power, the less palace surveillance. "I, of course, refused, but I'll still ask why it has to be me," Sola said point blank. The man asked her if she would marry him if he said so. In this way, he hoped to take advantage of her curiosity, but she was not going to give up either. "That's why I answered, if you don't tell me, you won't know." "Princess Dohye is coming?" the prince of the north gave in. Princess Dohye is the only blood relative of the great northern prince. The once beloved princess suffered a bitter fate. "I have never been to the palace since I came to the north," the man said. They are not happy to see the former crown prince walking around the palace. He was sent so far away, and his younger sister, unaware of what he was doing, still remains in the palace. The princess was unwell, and Prince Do-yeon wanted to meet her for at least one day, and Seola thought that it looked like she was being held hostage. "We have your sister, so don't even think about rebelling." That's how it looked. The prince also understands everything, so he cannot just meet her. And for Solhee, this is quite unexpected, not for any other reason, but precisely because of the brother's desire to see his sick sister. The reason was so human that she even felt ashamed. It is not only the prince who should be concerned about this marriage, because with or without the prince, many eyes will be on Solha, and no matter how hard she tries, she won't be able to hide from them. If she marries the prince, she will have to win him over to her side. Even if someone doubted her, with the faith and protection of the great prince, she would be safer with him in all the north. Sola hadn't thought about it before, but if she could lure the prince, she needed to be kinder to him. While the girl was delving into her thoughts, a strange sound was heard, followed by the frightened scream of the maid. "Your Highness," Sola could barely speak from horror, while the frightened servant begged him to simply kill her. Streams of water ran down the northern prince's face, and the mistress of the house was perplexed as to what had happened. The guest himself explained the situation, stating that the maid had spilled the tea. Tochi sat on the ground and, like a wind-up toy, asked His Highness for forgiveness, and Sola tried to calm her down. "What were you thinking about?" Solha asked in a whisper, and the maid also whispered that she was afraid to leave her mistress alone with the guest. But when she brought the tea, she tripped over a stone and spilled everything, to which the lady remarked that this was not much help, knowing the prince's character. "Everything is fine. The tea was warm. I didn't burn myself," a male voice was heard, and the girl turned around in surprise. The man wiped drops of tea from his face and noticed that he needed to change his clothes, so he asked to borrow some. "Because of you, I can't live my life," Sola complained to the maids, seizing the opportunity. One of the girls brought clothes for the prince, and they could breathe a sigh of relief. At least they found the right size, and it was good that the prince didn't get angry. Although he could have raged and thrown, both maids breathed a sigh of relief. "Well, Maybe I was just lucky. In any case, don't go out again. Stay hidden. I'll give the things to the prince and come, so don't move, Sola ordered. And although she said that she would figure it out herself, on the way to the room she was thinking about what she should do now. Just out of a desire to see his sister, the northern prince is ready to marry. It's hard to forget about it, and it looks like he won't give up on this idea. The girl knocked on the door and, opening it, announced that she had brought clothes. The man stood there, naked to the waist, flashing his pumped-up abs. Sola suddenly fell silent and blushed, unable to tear her eyes away. A few moments passed before the girl closed her eyes and asked too loudly what he was doing. "That's what I wanted to ask. I told you I was going to change. I couldn't warn you before coming in," Do-hyun asked, taking the clothes from the embarrassed girl. And then he added that there are still differences between men and women, and she saw his body. Now she has no choice but to marry him. The prince did not miss the opportunity. Already stunned, Sola was even more shocked and asked if it would be okay if she said she didn't see anything. She didn't want to admit it. He had a good body, and she couldn't even remember the last time she saw a man's body. But Do-hyun knew what she saw, so everything was not okay at all. "If you reject my offer, I will have to keep you this way," he said sadly. Seeing his expression, the girl asked if he really missed his sister that much. He frankly replied that he missed her and would soon forget what she looked like, and then asked a counter-question she did not want to use marriage in this way. "If you want love, I can try." Do-hyun got closer to the girl's face. But Sola believed that if you have to try for love, then anyone can do it. "Anyway, think it over carefully. I'm giving you until tomorrow." The northern prince pulled his cape over his shoulders. He announced that, as befits him, he would send a carriage for her, surprising the girl by leaving so soon. But as he left, Do-hyun asked one more important question. "You don't know how to do magic?" The words sounded ordinary, but the man's eyes froze in anticipation of an answer. Sola didn't immediately understand what she was being asked about, and the man added that he had heard that she came from a family of magicians. The girl was embarrassed, of course. She was a snow lady, but it was better that he had no reason to doubt her. Therefore, she answered with a smile that unfortunately she could not use magic. "Of course, you walk barefoot, that's what I thought." These words sounded cold and with some kind of subtext. Sola became slightly angry and suggested that he take a closer look, and the prince was surprised to note the anger in her intonation. Having finally sent the guest away, Sola sighed wearily. What a mess. While wondering what to do, the girl looked up and noticed some hooves in front of her. "Take a rest," came the muffled voice of the uninvited guest, in response to the question of what he was doing here. "Hey, you're not going to answer." Sola didn't intend to stand on ceremony and immediately used magic. The stream of magic, taking the form of a white horse, rushed to attack. "Wait, Sister Sola," the creature with ears stammered, trying to defend itself. The creature, pinned to the floor by the magical horse, insisted that it was him, but Solha, although she recognized him, immediately became angry at what he was doing in the dark. Another creature materialized nearby, wearing a hood that hid its face, and casually asked if it was the great prince who had come, and what completely surprised Solha was that there was also a third small creature with wings. Ignoring the irritated state of the hostess, the guests immediately asked if it was true that she was marrying the great prince. They were all monsters living on this snowy mountain. Since the conflict between humans and monsters began, the latter have become a source of fear for humans. But they are just creatures who also want to live. They would definitely be against a marriage with the great northern prince, so Solha could refuse with a clear conscience. "Well done. You will become the wife of the northern prince," a joyful voice rang out, stunning the girl. The monsters calmly discussed how the prince's wife had considerable influence, at least in the north. "I don't want to. You're looking for my death," Sulka exploded. But they rightly believed that if she convinced the prince, perhaps the yokai would no longer be persecuted, or at least she would be able to stop the humans. No, it definitely won't work with them. The girl wasn't going to agree, but the monsters started asking her. Just recently, the Fox sisters were in danger. Ordinary people began to hunt them. This news hit the girl hard, but they were still going to tell her about another incident on the neighboring mountain. Okay, I understand what you mean," Sola agreed, having made her decision. "The great prince wants to meet his sister. When this happens, he will lose all interest in her. Now that humans have the upper hand, ordinary people are starting to kill monsters too, and there's something she can do to stop them." If she becomes the mistress of these lands, which are owned by the northern prince, many opportunities will open up to her. Damn, how many years will this marriage last? She asked rhetorically. The next day, two of the monsters, having turned into humans, wiped away the tears that had fallen, sending off Sola's sister to marry and wishing her happiness. The girl was indignant that they had turned into people just to stare when a girl in a hood approached her. "Sola, wait, take this bag of incense." She extended her open hands to her. "They say that people cast spells on the pillars of houses to distinguish the smell of monsters, and this bag will mask the smell of Solha." The girl asked Mrs. Sola to make sure to wear it, mentioning that she had also given Tochi and Chogi the same. At that moment, one of the maids ran to them with the message that the carriage had arrived. "We were waiting for you, Mrs. Solha," the girl heard when she walked out the gate. The girl climbed into the palanquin gratefully, and although she had already made a decision, she still didn't know if she was doing the right thing. Maybe what she feels is sympathy, or maybe it is curiosity. The man went so far to see his sister. "I wonder if he will be different from the men she has met before. That is what is curious. What kind of love can someone who is colder than a snow maiden talk about? Since this is the case, she will follow her only goal, to survive without revealing her identity. The royal family might be unhappy with the bride, whether they see her weaknesses or not. If they don't care, Sola will be happy. Whatever happens, you will have to give up your interest and just live calmly. Oh, your skin is so pale and your hair is like silk, a real beauty." The girls surrounded Solha. The girl was very embarrassed. These words did not sound like compliments at all, and the girls looked like triplets. The ladies, completely ignoring Sola, were loudly discussing how the prince finally had a wife, while they thought he would live his whole life as a bachelor. The gossips stopped discussing and smiled sickeningly only when they heard a man's voice nearby. "Excuse me, Ms. Sola, my name is Juno. I am the assistant of the great prince," the smiling young man introduced himself. He then sent the ladies to prepare for the wedding ceremony, and Sola remembered that she had already seen him next to the prince. "It seems like everyone is looking forward to the upcoming wedding ceremony. The prince will be back soon." Juno tried to calm the girl down, to which she replied that everything was fine. Having asked the lady to address him informally, the assistant offered to take her to the room, and at the same time told her a little about this place. The prince originally lived here, and this house occupies the largest territory in the north. "The soldiers live here too, so this house is also the safest," Juno commented as they passed the men training hard. So the lady doesn't have to worry about the monsters, but Sola had only one phrase in her head, like a spell, that she wouldn't be caught. Feeling extremely tired, the girl was glad when Juno hurried to lead her into the room. But just before the door, he put his hand in his pocket to give the lady a small gift, a necklace made from minerals mined in a local cave. "A beautiful necklace, homemade?" she asked with a smile, feeling that this was already a burden. Soon, Juno brought the lady to the room where she would live during her honeymoon with His Highness, but a surprise awaited them there. "Here you are. We've been waiting for you, Lady Sola. We're here to help you," said the lady-in-waiting one, looking the girl over appraisingly. Sola overheard the warriors standing outside questioning the ladies of the court's willingness to help, noting that there were even more servants outside. "They don't seem to get along," Sola Juno said in a whisper, referring to the relationship between warriors and court ladies. Naturally, the great prince became a thorn in the palace. Most likely these women came north not to help, but to keep a closer eye on him. Sola only silently prayed that they would watch the prince and not her. Lady Wong looked the girl over from head to toe and said with a sad sigh that she would have to teach her a lot. "Is it true?" Sola asked with a feigned smile, skillfully hiding her righteous indignation. Lamenting that arguments with her relatives' servants had started right from the doorway, the girl tried hard to keep a smile on her face while the woman commented on her gait and appearance, and after all, she would become the wife of the crown prince. "It's good that at least she looks tolerable, and we will help her look more beautiful during the wedding ceremony." The ladies of the court openly discussed the girl standing right in front of them. Sola undoubtedly understood these cold looks and ridicule of people. But throughout her long life, she had never been able to get used to it, and now she felt disgusting. A male voice behind her brought her out of her reverie. "What are you doing? Who entered the bride's room without permission?" the prince said right next to the girl. Sola jumped in surprise because he had just not been here. The ladies of the court, observing etiquette, began to greet His Highness, but he quickly cut them off. Dame Wan tried to discuss the upcoming wedding, but His Highness firmly said that was enough for today and that she was free. Do I really need to explain that I want to talk to my fiancé? The northern prince's voice took on a metallic tone as the woman continued to insist on her own. But after his words, she was forced to lower her head and say that she would wait outside. And when Lady Vaughn headed for the door, she was stopped by His Majesty's words. "If you enter the bride's room again on a whim, I will take it very seriously," the man said, placing his hand on his bride's shoulder. Sola froze. She thought that if she became the wife of the great northern prince, she would be afraid of him, and they would live without noticing each other. But can family life be different? Can they be happy? Are you dreaming? This isn't your house, where you only had 2 maids. The prince's voice broke into her thoughts. This is the heart of the north, and if she continues like this, she will die without anyone noticing. These words angered Sola so much that she wished she could cancel the thought that had occurred to her a moment ago. "Now you will become the wife of the great prince," Do-hyun began as they sat down opposite each other. But from the very moment of her arrival, the courtiers ignore her. The girl was very surprised by the prince's words that the wedding would take place tomorrow in any case. He had informed his sister of this date in advance. If he had received a reply to the marriage letter on time, it would not have been such a surprise. Sola was indignant that it sounded like it was her fault, but the man was also irritated and thought it was all her carelessness. And the girl was completely shocked by the words that they seriously thought about kidnapping her, but everything turned out much better. In any case, the prince asked her to be careful, especially with the ladies of the court. It's obvious that they came to feel around to see if there was anything they could steal or find fault with. "I am saying this because I do not want you to have problems because of me. Always be confident, even in front of such servants. Do not lose heart," His Majesty asked. The girl was very surprised by these words, as well as the tone in which they were spoken. "Your words mean that you are worried about me?" the girl asked directly. Do-hyun didn't understand what kind of anxiety she was talking about. Although the words are cold and scary, in contrast, there is a sense of kindness in your tone, Sola explained with a smile. However, if he is going to live with her, he must speak politely, otherwise she will constantly have to interpret all of this. "You always frown and get angry like that," the girl showed, and the prince asked again if she was impersonating him. "Aren't these words like a balm on the wounds of the groom, who even chose the wedding date himself?" Sola asked. Do-hyun got angry because she answered too late, but the girl immediately suggested that they tell the courtiers outside. It was her little revenge, and judging by his reaction, it was quite successful. Royal weddings have always been conducted according to special etiquette and rules, so it is important to take the time and prepare for this. His Highness Do-hyun requested that it be held as soon as possible, and the ceremony will be held in the north. Sola had to listen to the lady-in-waiting very calmly explain that not only nobles from the north would come, but also from other regions, and that the wedding costumes had been sent from the palace. But still, the great prince should be happy, because tomorrow he will meet his younger sister, whom he missed so much. And only then did it dawn on the girl that the prince's sister would come here. The memories of former sisters-in-law, who were always dissatisfied with their brother's choices, were still fresh. Sola had been listening to the court lady's tedious speeches for a long time and felt her back begin to hurt more and more. His Highness noticed that the bride was fidgeting in her seat, clearly feeling uncomfortable. "Wait, change places with me?" he suddenly said to the girl. The lady-in-waiting tried to object that it was against the rules of etiquette, but he didn't want to hear about it, and was simply worried about his bride. The girl froze when the prince simply walked up to her. It was very unexpected. "What's wrong with you?" "You were surprised that I was expressing my concern so openly?" Do-hyun asked in a whisper, leaning close to her. It was so strange that all Sola could think was that maybe this was him taking revenge on her. "I was joking, just sit there. You haven't rested from the journey yet," the prince added calmly, and the girl noted that such behavior really didn't suit him. She thanked His Highness and sat down in his place, wondering whether he could behave like this. Everything that the lady-in-waiting saw here was immediately reported to her superior. Is it possible that by fulfilling his marital duties, His Highness is trying to show that he intends to remain in the north? Even if it's obvious, Sola still doesn't understand, but now she just needs to focus. Having announced that preparations for the wedding would begin at dawn, the lady-in-waiting left, and Do-hyun followed her as well. However, before leaving the room, the man turned to his bride. "Thank you for listening to my request," he said sincerely, looking into her eyes. Sola was dumbfounded. Could it really be that he just thanked her? "Even if I was waiting for you, I still wouldn't want to get married like this," explained the northern prince. Therefore, he promised to provide her with a comfortable life and also expressed hope that they would get along. Sola thanked His Highness, but the girl was nervous. It was too unexpected. When after indifference he appeared before her like this, she was embarrassed. With that, they said goodbye, and when Prince Do-yun went outside, he almost knocked over a maid who was standing too close to the door. The maid tried to explain herself somehow, but no one except Solha paid attention to her. "Hey, what are you doing?" the girl asked, and the maid jumped up in fright and cursed. Sola was taken aback when she heard her words, but the girl came to her senses and began to apologize to the lady. "Why are you so nervous?" the girl asked bluntly. And the maid, with a voice trembling with fear, said that she had a letter for the great prince. And what seemed even stranger was that the letter had to be sold to the prince personally. What is there in it that even the ladies of the court are not allowed to know about? Sola, seeing the maid's fear, volunteered to deliver the letter to the prince herself, and even promised that she would not look into it, so she could not worry. Sola held the letter in her hands, surprised that she had gotten herself into this, because there could be problems. The less you know, the better you sleep, but she had to give this to the prince. Soon the very day arrived, the day of the wedding ceremony. All the nobles of the north came to this greatest celebration, and every woman envied the beautiful bride. It was a pleasant, blessing-filled day. But one person wasn't smiling at all, he was angry. Partly Sola felt guilty. She needed to see what was in the letter. Here you will find everyone from northern nobles to wealthy merchants. But why does the atmosphere feel more like a funeral? Why do we need a feast if it only makes us sick? The girl thought, trying to keep a smile on her face. But what happened to Do-yun that he reacts like this? Suddenly, the prince jumped up from his seat and whispered to his bride that he would be leaving for a short while. "You're leaving right now?" Sola asked hesitantly, also in a whisper, although she wanted to shout that they were having a wedding. "I'll just be a minute, I'll be quick," the prince answered quietly, but there was something gloomy in his tone. The girl tried to stop him, but the man, without listening, quickly left the room. Sola felt abandoned and alone at this celebration of life. And from all sides, voices of guests were heard, saying what an unusual wedding, the poor bride and all that sort of thing. How could this scoundrel leave his bride? "Why did you leave, Your Highness?" The girl followed him out into the street. But the man did not explain anything, but only asked where the maid who had given her the letter was. Sola did not know this, and the prince went to look for that very servant, not paying any attention to his now wife. Sola was angry. The prince was annoying, and her clothes were so heavy that she couldn't move normally. But since he doesn't stop, she will stop him herself. She raised her hand and after a little magic blew, and somewhere ahead, the snow lying on the ground gathered into a snowball and headed straight towards Do-yun. But the man instantly took a step to the side, and the cold mass flew straight into the girl's face. Angry that she had underestimated him, Solha, with feigned calm, answered the prince's question about who had thrown the snowball, saying that it was probably children playing. Do-hyun casually mentioned that she should have dodged, but the girl pointed out that if he hadn't run away, she wouldn't have been hit. "Calm down. It's because of the letter that has you so worried," the girl asked him point blank, but in response, she received that he had no reason to tell her about it. Although the girl was angry, she actually understood everything and guessed the reasons. "It's because of Princess Doha." Sola did not see the prince's sister at the wedding and therefore asked if she was ill. His Majesty reluctantly replied that something like that had happened. The letter stated that she had started taking various medications 2 weeks ago. Recently, the queen has become increasingly concerned about Doha's health and has personally sent her medicinal herbs. Ever since she started drinking them, she has had a fever. Dohi still can't come to her senses. She tried to cope with the fever in order to see her brother, but alas, she couldn't. "Please be kind to your new wife and take care of yourself," concluded the letter from His Majesty's sister. From all this, Sola concluded that the palace had deliberately done things so that she would not come. "Maybe yes, maybe no," the prince answered sadly. It's possible that the letter wasn't even sent to Doha because the man wanted to find out everything in detail, and the girl agreed that His Highness might be right. The palace could have sent the letter for some reason, and if it was real, then Princess Doha could have been poisoned. "We need to find the maid who brought the letter," the man said. And Solha immediately noticed that same maid right behind his back. Actively waving her arms, the girl begged her mistress to spare her and not to give her away. And since the maid behaved like children in her house, Sola decided to help her a little and rushed to His Highness. "I'll find her and find out who she received the letter from," Sola said softly, looking into his eyes. The girl explained that there were a lot of prying eyes here, so His Highness needed to be told that she was feeling unwell, and he simply went to prepare a place for her to rest. The man sincerely did not understand why he should trust her. She, in turn, did not understand why he shouldn't, since now she was one of his people, and she began to get angry at his stubbornness. "Then believe me," the girl asked persistently and confidently. Eventually, the man agreed to her proposal. The girl felt relieved that she was finally able to calm him down. And as soon as the prince had left, she asked loudly whether it was true that the letter was from Princess Doha. "Of course, I served her," the maid responded emotionally, stopping hiding behind the wall. The princess personally asked her to deliver the letter. When asked about the princess's health, the maid replied that she looked very sick. It doesn't seem like she was lying. Whether the letter is real or not, something is clearly going on. What are they so scared about there? Having decided to believe the maid, Sola let her go, saying that she would explain everything to His Highness. The girl was very happy that everything had been resolved this way, but at the end she asked the lady not to come to the palace. "There's been something strange going on there lately. Stay away from it." The maid hurried away, leaving Sola to digest her last words in bewilderment. Despite some minor concerns, the wedding went well. The girl thought that everything was over, but the first wedding night was still ahead. "Don't worry, it's just one night," she persuaded herself, lying in the hot water. She herself felt that persuasion was not working, and her anxiety was growing more and more from the fact that she would have to meet with His Majesty again. Tochi soon came and brought towels for the lady. Having wrapped her clean body, Sola continued to convince herself not to worry. This is part of married life. They are now married and will do everything like married couples. The whole time she was getting dressed and getting ready, the girl kept repeating one phrase in her head: "They are spouses." But the more she repeated it, the more she felt her face turn red. God, she shouldn't worry so much. This wasn't the first time for her, but it seemed like too much time had passed. Sola changed into her night clothes and asked when the great general would arrive. The little maid hesitated, not knowing what to answer. The great general went to his room. The words sounded like a bolt from the blue. A little earlier, Do-hyun stood in front of the door of his now-wife's room. The maids were doing their work when one of them looked outside to get oil for the lamp and found the great general right outside the door. The frightened girl asked what he was doing there. The man replied that he was thinking whether to come in or not. "I know, but this is a political marriage, and I don't want to burden her with her wedding night," the man said sheepishly. Today was a hard day, so he asked me to tell him that he would be sleeping in his room. However, even after this, the man was in no hurry to leave, and the frightened maid realized that he wanted to say something else. "Tell her I'm sorry she had to work so hard and give her this. It helps with fatigue." The great principal handed the maid a small box. And now Tochi showed this box to the lady. The prince handed over the tea leaves and said that they help with fatigue. "The great general is kinder than I thought. This is very good tea," the girl rejoiced, not noticing her mistress's gloomy mood. It was only after a few moments that she realized that Mrs. Solha looked like the devil. The girl, without saying a word, turned around and headed towards the exit of the room, ignoring the worried cries of the maid. She was angry, whether he was sorry or not, what he meant by sleeping in another room on their wedding night. If they spend their wedding night apart, rumors will spread that she didn't go through with the wedding, that she's cold as a stone, and that the great general might simply not be capable as a man. Such rumors could be spread. But Sola doesn't need that kind of attention at all. And still, even if they just sleep next to each other, it's not even up for discussion. That's how the girl got to his room. The great general is a bastard. How can he sleep thinking so? Sola suddenly heard quiet groans from the closed room. It's Do-hyun moaning. He's having a nightmare, the girl worried. But the moans became more and more serious, and the girl realized that this was not a nightmare. "There is a monster in the room." "Great general, are you all right?" The girl began to pound hard on the closed door, starting to worry. There was only one way out, for which the girl made sure that there was no one nearby. Sola raised her hand and performed magic, instantly opening the door. As soon as the way was open, the girl burst into the room with a worried cry. Do-hyun lay on the bed, trying to get rid of the huge blue monster with long tentacles that was towering over him. "Who are you?" Sola asked, generating magic to attack. The huge chunk of ice formed by the girl was approaching the monster at high speed, but as soon as there was nothing left to reach the target, the skeletal monster effortlessly blocked it. The girl got angry, but at least it made him leave the prince alone. Sola rushed towards the man, who was trying to catch his breath after the attack. "Great General, are you all right?" At that moment, the prince's assistant burst into the room. Seeing the master and mistress next to him, Juno asked more calmly if His Highness was all right, and the girl replied that the monster had strangled the great general in his sleep. "I'm fine, don't fuss," the northern prince answered wearily. Neither Solha nor Juno were going to leave so easily, even though the prince assured them that he was fine. "Great General, this is dangerous, let's go to my room," the girl said with a completely innocent look, glad that the problem with the wedding night was solved. The prince repeated that everything was fine and suddenly noticed the ice, assuming that it was created by a monster, which forced Sola to agree with this. "Great General, I won't eat you," the girl remarked, as she and her assistant persuaded the prince to leave his room. And now Do-hyun sat at a distance from Seolhee, asking her to ignore him. This stubbornness was irritating, but he wasn't going to sleep in the corner. "This is our first night as a married couple. Maybe you'll come to my aid." Sola carefully approached the man. She reminded him that he was constantly concerned about what people said about him, but for some reason he slept separately on their wedding night. The man replied that it was something else, and Sola regretted that she couldn't even hit him. If it weren't for her, he could have died, but surprisingly the general is calm. "It's strange that I'm calm," Do-hyun seemed to read her thoughts. And then he explained that since childhood there had been attempts on his life, ambushes had been set up for him, nothing special. But today was a special day for most people. It's unusual for their lives to be threatened, Do-hyun noted. And the tone in which he said it made the girl think. She thought that he was scary, but it turns out that General Do-hyun can be compassionate and caring. "Great General, it didn't look like a yukai. The ghost that tried to kill you wasn't like other monsters," Sola said. "There aren't many yokai in the north, and few can withstand the northern frost, but those that do are as strong as the cold in the snowy mountains. But such a yokai as the one in the general's chambers had never been seen in these parts." Sola now realized that his form was unstable, and his aura was different from what yukai usually emitted. Someone created it, the girl expressed her assumption. The general could not believe how this was possible and who needed to create a monster. "There's definitely a yukai detection spell here, but it only senses the aura of yukai that come from outside. And if the yokai originally appeared inside, no matter how strong the spell, it would not be able to detect it." Do-hyun noticed that she knew a lot about yukai, and Seolha flinched. Looking away, she said that her father was very interested in them. But it didn't matter, because it was done by one of the guests, apparently taking advantage of the crowd of people. Do-hyun decided to end things for today and intended to go sleep in another room, but the girl tried her best to stop him. "It's very cold, we could sleep together and warm up," she insisted, but the general still refused. The girl began to panic. If this continued, her married life would come to an end. In the end, she asked him to at least stay in her room, and she shuddered when the general repeated her words about the criminal being one of the guests. New people who came to the wedding. But Sola herself is also a new person for him, and the girl, with a sinking heart, realized that he also suspected her. "Do you even know how many people tried to take my life?" he asked menacingly. If she had known, she would not have asked him to trust her so blindly, and he himself would not have spoken to her so calmly. Do-hyun chose her as his wife, but that doesn't mean he trusts her. "Please trust me." Sola put her whole soul into these words. She understood that it was normal that he didn't trust her, but she trusted him and married him. The girl did not add that otherwise she could have simply died. "I will definitely find out whose doing this is. I will find it and prove that I can be trusted," she promised. After all, she is the wife of the great northern general. "You said the same thing back then. Do you really want to be my wife?" the man asked directly and softly. Sola became embarrassed and repeated not so confidently that this was so. Do-hyun didn't say anything in response, and only added that he was going to bed. The atmosphere was so strange and unusual that the girl sincerely did not understand what was wrong. Sola finally lay down in bed alone and had no idea what would happen next. Suddenly the door creaked and the great general entered the room. The girl perked up, wondering why he had come. Had she done something wrong again? But she preferred to pretend to be asleep. The man quietly approached her bed and just as quietly sat down on its edge. Sola's heart was pounding wildly, but she didn't give herself away even when the great prince leaned towards her. "Wife, why are you acting like this?" he whispered in her ear. Sola instantly blushed, and Do-hyun said that he knew that she was not sleeping. "I was sleeping. Who leaves and returns in the middle of the night? What are you planning?" The girl decided that the best defense is an attack. But His Highness calmly replied that he had brought her more blankets, thinking that she might freeze. "Cover yourself properly," it sounded like concern, and now Sola felt strange. Besides, he could have sent a servant to do this. "You said that you want to be mine, then don't be sick," said the great northern prince. The girl couldn't find what to say to this, but her cheeks were still red. Considering his business finished, the man quickly left the room, and even when Solha invited him to warm up with her, he only wished him good night. The next morning was filled with numerous rumors that the newlyweds had not consummated their marriage and had even quarreled. And although the gossips were discussing this among themselves, Sola heard everything perfectly well. People haven't changed at all, so let them gossip. It doesn't matter now. So she greeted those around her with a wide smile. The guests are leaving tomorrow, and until then she needs to find the one who created the yukai. It is to be expected that the great general suspects her, especially when there are so many strangers here. She might die as a criminal before the yukai even finds her. "Oh, husband," Sola blossomed into a smile seeing His Highness. She rushed towards him with joyful cries asking why he hadn't woken her up, thereby frightening the man. "I told you that there would be terrible rumors. They'll talk mostly about me, not about the general," the girl whispered, trying to explain her behavior, and she asked him to play along, for which he had to hug her back. She repeated again that you would definitely find the criminal, so he shouldn't worry about it. "Do everything in your power and step away." Do-hyun pushed the girl not hard, but noticeably, not even thinking of playing along with her. "See you, husband." Sola tried her best to create the appearance of well-being, angry at such an attitude, because just yesterday he was talking about being his. Meanwhile, Do-hyun asked the warrior accompanying him where Juno was, and in response received that he was on morning rounds, and also said that he would go hunting during the day. Sola walked away, muttering under her breath. What indifference, and her whole appearance expressed displeasure. "But I'll be back earlier," His Majesty smiled to himself. From that moment on, the search for the criminal began. The first thing Solha did was approach the women under the pretext of finding out how they slept. They told her that it was very warm and cozy, but the conversation immediately turned to how the lady managed to marry His Highness the Grand Prince. Sola was embarrassed, but she was immediately bombarded with questions about whether they had met before, whether the prince was kind to her, rumors were circulating that His Highness liked her type, and so on. "I have things to do." The girl hurried away, realizing that the search had failed. Then Sola began eavesdropping on other people's conversations from afar, but only heard very intimate details of other people's personal lives. "Madam, there you are. We've been looking all over for you." That's what the lady-in-waiting found her doing, quite frightening her. It turns out that, as the master's wife, she needs to take care of embroidering a new bedspread, which is what she was forced to do. A wonderful experience of married life, angry at everything. The girl quickly wielded the needle. She had absolutely no time for this. She needed to find the criminal as quickly as possible. After a short time, the embroidery was ready, and Mrs. Sola was getting ready to leave. But the ladies of the court stopped her, saying that now they needed to prepare dinner. "We just had lunch and were already cooking dinner." The girl was indignant, but they explained to her that there were a lot of guests, so they needed to prepare in advance. That's why they say being the wife of a high-ranking man is no easier, she realized belatedly. "Can I help you?" a male voice asked, and Sola saw Juno in front of her. Helping his mistress, the warrior deftly gave orders to the ladies of the court, thereby significantly relieving Solha of household duties. Once the household chores were finished, the young people had a minute to talk. "It's not easy being the wife of a great prince, but madam, it seems that you are not only busy with this." The young man smiled. He assumed that Solha was so busy because of what happened yesterday, and the girl confirmed his guess. She wants to figure out who created the monster. From her words, Juno concluded that the criminal was among them, and perhaps it was one of the guests. And then he offered her his help in this matter. "Together it will be faster than alone," the warrior smiled, and Sola was touched that he was so kind, unlike the one he served. I'm not that good. I have to protect and solve problems to feed my brothers and sisters, like everyone else in the north, Juno said. Juno is the only one caring for his family. They live at the foot of the mountain, and he visits them once a month. Their village was destroyed by enemy invaders, and they almost died. His Highness the Great Prince saved them and helped them. Thanks to him, Juno's family can live and eat like this, but Solha didn't want to hear any thanks to this cold-blooded man, all because Juno works well. It's good that you are helping the Great Prince, Juno, Sola said. And then someone asked her in her ear why this was. Jumping up in surprise, the girl asked His Highness if he had not left, but he replied that he had returned early. Do-yun called his assistant to come with him, but he, usually obedient, hesitated he needed to help his mistress with something. Help with what His Highness asked, and immediately realized that he was talking about the night incident. But he couldn't believe that Sola was really looking. From his point of view, she was just walking back and forth. I'll take care of the search, madam. It's cold. Go indoors, Do-hyun insisted, despite the girl's dissatisfied cries that she had promised to find. A little further away stood two ladies who had paid attention to the newlyweds' conversation. Do-hyun also noticed them, but was in no hurry to do anything that his wife had previously asked him to do. Moreover, the man suddenly fell silent and generally looked dissatisfied, which alerted Solha. Madam, go inside and don't waste time. His voice sounded colder than ever. The girl did not understand why he was behaving this way, and the prince urged Juno to go with him. Sola was left alone again, listening to the gossip of those around her about how they clearly did not get along, and that the Great Prince was living up to his title of Northern Prince. She tried to maintain a neutral expression on her face. There were people around after all, but in her heart she was indignant. Walking past the gossips with her head held high, the girl thought, she didn't marry him for love. She felt sorry for his sister and wanted to help, so she did everything she could. It was unclear why he brought her here and treated her like that. Sola must have been partly hoping that he would be a little different. A fleeting kindness, disappearing like snowflakes on the palms of her hands. Perhaps she sympathized with him, thought that he was in the same situation as she was. And in the end, she didn't even notice how she began to expect something, and this upsets her. Sola's maids were in the process of transporting their mistress's things, but they were surprised at where she was going alone. I just decided to go for a walk, the girl said, heading right now to the snowy mountains. The girls were indignant at how she was going to get there, but Sola replied that she would find a way and ordered them not to follow her. Great Prince, aren't you too cold to your mistress? She is your wife after all, Juno asked His Majesty, asking him to be kinder to her. Her Highness the Princess said the same thing, and Do-hyun had nothing to say in response. Juno, how many people came to sincerely congratulate us? They came to watch me, the prince said. It is quite possible that someone wants to overthrow him under the pretext that he is neglecting his duty to protect the people because he has become infatuated with his wife. Juno doubted they could go that far, but the prince was sure of it. They can do everything to protect the northerners. I can't afford to be kind to my wife, Do-hyun said sadly. Then Juno asked, which surprised the prince, what difference did it make who she was? There were other women around, but the Great Prince of the North still decided to marry Solha. Juno was very interested in why the gentleman chose Mrs. Solha as his wife. I liked her because she turned out to be difficult, the prince replied. When he saw her standing alone in the cold, she seemed like a strong person to him. The assistant didn't understand what he meant, but Do-hyun was lost in his memories. It was snowing heavily at the time, and Do-hyun got separated from the group while hunting, and at one point just looked up. What he saw made him freeze instantly. There, a little higher up the mountain, he saw her. The girl stood sublimely in the cold winter in the middle of a chilly forest. There were rumors that she had gone mad from loneliness. But to Do-hyun she seemed familiar, probably because they were both alone in these frosty, eternally snowy mountains. When he first saw this black-haired girl standing in the middle of the white world with her blue aura, it was snowing heavily. These memories pulled the prince into their abyss. Enough, let's go there. His Highness turned sharply, and his assistant hurried after him. Sola walked along the snowy mountain, freely using her magic, and felt much better. Oh, I shouldn't have told her I couldn't use spells. If she had told him that she was a shaman, then at least she could have pretended to cast spells and use some abilities. How boring it was to walk. Seriously thinking about whether she should run away. Maybe it was just fate. Sola noticed something. A man passed nearby, and the girl realized with surprise that it was the Great Prince. But why is he alone? Where is Juno hiding behind a rock? Sola realized that Do-hyun apparently likes solitude. The thought flashed through her mind that it would be better if the tiger ate him, then she would remain a widow instead of a divorce. Lost in sad thoughts, the girl noticed some kind of blue glow. Isn't this the ghost, Sola realized? The Great Prince must have sensed someone approaching. Could it be that the ghost was using some kind of ability? The girl straightened up, raised the bow, and pulled the string. In fact, the Great Prince has no idea how hard she tries. Taking aim, Sola released the bowstring and fired. The ice arrow approached the ghost with lightning speed, but he dodged it at the last moment. And then, hiding in a protective ball, he disappeared. Sola was sad that she hadn't managed to shoot him. It was a pity he had run away, but next time she would finish him off, the girl promised herself and turned around. 3 huge wolves were staring at her and slowly approaching. Without thinking twice, the animals rushed to attack, snapping their sharp teeth, and Sola screamed. There were sounds of powerful blows, but instead of the expected pain from the bites, she felt only a gust of wind. Someone, like lightning, appeared between her and the wolves, scattering the latter. "Are you okay?" Do-hyun asked, putting the bloody sword back in its sheath. The girl answered in the affirmative and immediately asked if everything was okay with him. The man said he only had a small bite, but the prince's entire hand was covered in blood and Sola was horrified. But while she was worried about his wound, the Great Prince asked what she was doing there anyway. "I was collecting herbs," the girl answered, trying not to look her husband in the eyes. His Highness asked suspiciously if she was planning to run away, but the girl immediately assured him that this was not the case. And in fact, she just went out for a walk, but what interested her most now was his hand. "It doesn't matter if it's nonsense or not. If my husband gets hurt, then I'm the one to blame," Sola said, gently taking his hand in hers. After all, her reputation directly depends on the appearance of the Great Prince. "I didn't know you cared so much about your reputation," Do-hyun was surprised. In fact, she didn't care before, at least until she became the wife of the Great Prince. After bandaging the wound and expressing hope that everything would heal quickly, the girl added that she appreciated that he saved her, but he should not forget about himself. Do-hyun was stunned into silence, not knowing how to react to such concern. However, he noticed that the girl's hands were cold, and she explained that they were always cool. But what the prince did next made the girl's heart beat faster. The man lifted her hands and brought them to his lips, warming them with his breath. "The Great Prince," was all the girl could say, holding her breath. "Every time I see you, you're standing alone in the snow. Apparently you really like the snow," the man said quietly, continuing to warm her hands in his. Do-hyun hopes that at least she won't catch a cold, even though she's constantly standing in the snow. "We're alone here," came the sudden question. The girl froze. He was behaving like that again, talking to her sweetly again. "Great General, are you in love with me?" Sola asked point blank. The man blushed and loosened his grip, not understanding what she was suddenly talking about. Sola also didn't understand. That's why she asked why he first behaved so coldly, and then affectionately what he wanted from her. The directness of the question made Do-hyun think, but after a few moments he said that he only knew how to protect someone. "Even if that's not the case, I can be the one to protect," the man added, stepping back from the girl. And then, to Solhee's surprise, he apologized if he had offended her. Now many eyes were on them. He just didn't want to lose her. "What do you mean? He didn't want to lose her?" "The general didn't want to lose her," the girl wondered. "Northern General, where did you go silently? The lady is also here." Juno approached them. The Great Prince decided that it was time for them to return, and the girl was left alone. She noticed something green on the ground and realized it was Juno's necklace. At first the girl thought it was hers, but she remembered that she hadn't taken anything of her own with her, and the more Solha looked at the find, the more suspicious it seemed to her. Returning to her room, the girl asked the maids to get her necklace, and it was indeed there. She had assumed that what was found on the mountain was not hers. "There's something strange about this necklace," Sola said. "He and the yokai from yesterday have similar auras." Yes, although weakly it can be felt, was that yokai really created through decoration. In any case, there is a high probability that the culprit is the owner of this necklace, and if so, then the criminal is Juno. The girl met the prince's assistant near the newlyweds' house and immediately apologized for calling so late, but she was curious about something. A little earlier, Sola told Tochi and Chogi that she would call Juno here, and during this time they should make sure that no one from the people walk nearby, and also hang amulets around the area. "I'll just go to the market quickly," she added when Tochi asked if Juno was really a criminal. The general's assistant really did seem so kind, but who knows what's in a person's soul. "I picked up this necklace because it was lying on the street," the girl told the assistant, explaining that she mistook it for something he had given her. Juno explained with a smile that the younger ones had made several just like them. "This is actually your necklace?" Sola asked, and the young man hesitated. The lady asked to take a closer look at it, and Juno confirmed that it was indeed his. But Sola didn't think so, and she told her assistant about it. Something about this necklace felt a little different. The young man did not understand what the lady was talking about. Juno previously said the necklace was made from minerals mined in nearby caves, but it was very different from what Solha has. So she went to the market and asked if the minerals were similar. All mineral experts say no. Why is Juno lying now because this necklace is not his? Maybe the yokai is his doing. "It can't be. It's not like that. I couldn't do that to the great general," the frightened assistant shouted. He seemed genuinely concerned and worried, and as if he was telling the truth. "Then break it. I only believe what I saw with my own eyes. Destroy this necklace," the girl said. Juno was completely at a loss, but at that moment a stern male voice was heard. "What are you two doing now?" It was Prince Do-yun, and he was quite displeased. Sola was surprised that the general was already here, and was again angry that these little animals were again unable to stop him. Juno is the general's right hand. Will he trust a person who has been his wife for only one day? "Do you think Juno is a criminal?" Do-hyun asked. But when the girl answered in the affirmative, he immediately cut her off. "This is not Juno. He is my man and has been with me for a long time. My wife is wrong," the prince said, completely confident in his words. However, the girl did not share his confidence. Even between parents, between children, between long-term spouses, there is no eternal trust, Sola answered. "They say a person changes in an instant. His Highness knows this too." Many people around him betrayed him, and there were also many traitors in Solha's life. They both know that there is no one more evil than people, and will he really believe him just because he is his person? "My people would never do that. My parents and sister too, those whom I consider my own, have never betrayed me," Do-hyun said. He also meant that it was not his people who, if they wished it, had already turned away from him. Therefore, Juno is not a criminal. The assistant listened to the master's words with his head bowed, and then something happened that stunned the great northern prince. "Great General, it was me. Please kill me." Juno suddenly fell to his knees. The assistant repented. He did all this. He created the yokai. "Please kill me, Great General," Do-hyun repented, dropping the amulet from his hands. A couple of days ago, a stranger approached him, asking him to create a yokai and simply be near the general. Of course he refused, but then she suddenly said that his younger brother and sister were quite cute, and how long would he last in this cold north if they were gone? "My family has been taken hostage," the man cried out in despair. His Highness asked why he did not tell him and who the woman was. Juno couldn't see her face, but it was definitely a person sent from the palace. "Great General, you gave me shelter and rewarded me with your trust, but every word was difficult for the assistant, but it was even more difficult to say out loud what was in the air. He betrayed his master." There was a deafening explosion, and the amulet shattered into many small pieces. At that very moment, a yokai appeared and grabbed the general's assistant, intending to kill him. Seola and Do-hyun rushed to help, but because of the amulets, no one knows what's going on here. The general can easily deal with this yokai, but the matter is complicated by the fact that it is connected to Juno. In that case, either the general kills the yokai along with Juno, or he allows the yokai to kill him. One way or another, Sola herself has nothing to lose. If Juno dies, her search for the criminal ends. If the general dies, she can simply run away. At that moment, the yokai staggered as it was attacked. The great prince rushed at the monster with a sword. "Yes, that's right. If you want to survive, kill them both." In the north, naturally, only the strongest survive. The sharp weapons of the yokai were rapidly approaching Do-hyun. The girl's heart sank, and she had only a split second to think. And Solha made a decision. She instantly appeared in front of the general, erecting a wall of ice with the help of magic. Do-hyun froze in surprise, not expecting such an action from his wife. The girl did not get distracted. She only shouted that this creature would disappear again. This time it was imperative to catch it. And first we need to somehow separate them from Juno. If a gap appears between the yokai and Juno, they will have a chance. But for now, the monster only constantly attacks. "General, I have an idea, help me!" the girl cried out, surprising the man again. Hearing this, Juno croaked so that the great general would not think about him and kill both of them. Even on the brink of death, the assistant did not want the great general to die because of him. But Do-hyun had already made his decision and raised his sword without hesitation. A few precise, quick strikes, and for a moment the yokai loosened its grip. The prince immediately saw the opportunity and did not fail to take advantage of it. A little earlier, Sola asked him to separate Juno from the yokai, even if only for a moment. Judging by his wife's tone, she had a clear plan, but the two needed to be separated. The man did what he did best, fought monsters. "Great General, you can do this," Sola asked mentally, watching him. After all, the gap that he will create will help her, will give her a chance to win. Events unfolded rapidly. The general managed to separate the yokai and his assistant for a second, and Solha immediately erected an ice wall between them. It took some effort, but the monster let go of Juno. Without wasting any time, Sola put all her magic into her next strike. And this time Juno fell to the ground, completely free of the monster. The girl sank down next to him. Too much of her strength was spent on such a weak yokai. And then she realized that she had to come up with an excuse for using magic. So she turned to Do-hyun with an embarrassed smile and said that she actually knew how to do magic. The man held his hand out in front of him and, using magic, raised several magic stones in a warning gesture, ready to use them at any moment. And to the girl's amazement, the next moment he launched these stones at her. A moment later, the magic stones turned into magic chains and enveloped her body, forcing her to kneel. With a sword in his hands, the great general towered over the chained girl. "You said you weren't capable of this," the prince's voice sounded. But the tone in which these words were spoken made Sola seriously scared. "So who are you really?" The general's eyes glowed with a metallic coldness. Realizing that she was in big trouble, Sola tried to reassure him that she really was a shaman. But His Highness interrupted her, ordering her not to lie. Usually magical techniques are used in witchcraft, but in her case, this was not the case. "Are you a yokai?" the prince asked, and the girl realized that she shouldn't have helped him from the very beginning. The general persistently demanded an answer, and Solha was going over her actions in her head. Then an expression flashed across his indifferent and cold face, as if he didn't know what to do, which was why she helped him as best she could. If the prince reacted this way only because Juno was his person, then why, just a day after she became his wife, and probably not having an ounce of trust in her, is he still looking at her the same way? "You also came to kill me?" the man asked, and his gaze showed either sadness or hope. Sola didn't understand why he was looking at her like that. Was he really disappointed after all? "Yes, I am a yokai. There was no point in evading in this situation," and she immediately added that she did not come to kill him. "I pretended to survive," Sola explained, doubting that anyone would even believe such a thing, since her rival was a famous northern general, and he was unlikely to believe the words of a yokai. Prince Do-hyun was silent, but his silence was oppressive, and the sword in his hands was pointed threateningly at the girl. At some point he swung his sword and, to Solhe's surprise, cut the chains that bound her. "Call someone first," he said, and Sola asked again, thinking she hadn't heard. His Majesty sat down in front of his assistant, intending to first assist him. The girl was taken aback. She was released so suddenly, and what if she tries to escape? She was already thinking about how to wait for the right moment to slip away, but then Do-hyun turned to her again. "If you want to run away, you better not even try," his look said it all. Sola realized that there was no chance of escape now. Yesterday's situation was resolved by killing the yokai, although some wondered how he could have gotten in here. But no one dared to ask the general about this personally. What's even more mysterious is that he left her alive. Sola wondered painfully why the general had spared the yokai's life. She also can't forget the expression on his face that she saw yesterday and can't understand what's hidden behind it. She even tried to sneak out at night, but it didn't work because numerous guards were on duty all night. There was no escape. "Madam, are you awake?" they asked her as soon as she went outside. Not even a mouse could get through here. Sola only thanked them for their work with an embarrassed smile. One of the guards noticed that the great general seemed to be very worried about the lady. Look how many guards he had assigned. But the girl considered this not security, but surveillance. Rightly realizing that if things continued like this, she would be killed by the general, Sola called Tochi and Chogi. Having said that she would go for a walk with the girls, she thought that, be that as it may, the escape would be her salvation. But she had only taken a couple of steps when she crashed into something hard. "Are you planning to go outside only under the protection of the maids?" asked a male voice, and the prince offered to go together, citing the fact that she was probably shaken after yesterday. The girl was embarrassed, but keeping a smile on her face, she noticed that the general was already here. Then His Highness dismissed all the guards, volunteering to accompany his wife himself. The girl was surprised how this could happen, and the man leaned towards her and whispered to her whether she really didn't want to go with him, and she had to say that she hadn't said that. "Then let's go." Prince Do-hyun suddenly hugged his wife by the shoulders, which caused a wave of internal indignation. The young men strolled along in silence until Solha, tired of the tension, asked where they were going, but in response only received an order to follow him. Suspecting that they were going to kill her in a secluded place, she thought that in order to deal with the general, she herself would need to stab him in the back, but suddenly she crashed into that very back. "We are here. This is the only blooming garden in the north," Do-hyun said. "This is a closed place, so no one can eavesdrop on them." Sola realized that this garden had a spell that kept the heat inside, and that there were also many rare northern plants here. But because of this, the girl became hot, and she wanted to take off her outerwear. It was actually a good thing he brought her here. They needed to talk alone. She called the general, and he immediately turned around, ready to listen. "Let's get a divorce." The girl looked him straight in the eyes. Now that he knows her true face, they can't be together. Do-hyun listened carefully as she said that she didn't come to kill him and asked him to let her go. But his answer to the request surprised Solha very much. "What if I don't want to?" "In that case, nothing can be done," the girl replied, and snowflakes began to form around her hands. "I mean, I don't want a divorce," the man explained, realizing that she was about to attack him, but his words completely confused her. Sola couldn't believe he was suggesting they just be together, but he was. Just in case, she reminded him of what happened yesterday, and Do-hyun replied that he remembered that she was a yokai. The girl was perplexed by what he was saying. She was a yokai and he was a human. Do-hyun asked in response if it wouldn't be safer for her to be with him. Sola didn't understand at all what he was planning. Maybe he hit his head yesterday when he was fighting the yokai. But then an idea came to her mind and the girl immediately voiced it. "Perhaps the general really has fallen in love with me," Sola said and blushed. His Majesty's mood immediately became gloomy, and he asked her again what she was talking about, which made the girl decide that she had definitely imagined everything that had happened yesterday. She suggested out loud that he might have another reason, and Do-hyun noticed that she had her own opinion on everything. He admitted that it had been brave to marry him and hide her origins, and the more Sola listened to him, the more confused she became. "Right now, of the two of us, I am the one who needs you," the man said. After all, only Sola can melt the ice in his sister's heart. During the time when General Do-hyun's mother was the queen of this country, many courtiers opposed her. Contrary to the accepted rules for choosing a bride, she became queen only by the will of the king. Even though she received all his love, she still remained a servant. The girl from the lower classes was the target of looks full of envy and jealousy. The first to be born was a male heir, which was the greatest blessing. But even after that, those who despised the queen repeatedly made attempts on her life, seeking to overthrow the ruler. The queen's shaman thwarted these attempts time and again, but one cannot protect oneself from everything. During the second pregnancy, the shaman again repelled an assassination attempt, but his protection was not enough. And Princess Doha was born in poor health. The child could neither run nor play. The doctor, having examined the princess, said that perhaps the girl's heart was frozen, thereby revealing the cause of her chronic weakness. An ice-wielding shaman could have helped, but they all died in the fighting. "You are a yokai who controls ice," said His Majesty, "and his sister's heart is still full of ice and she still lives, doing everything with caution. The great prince of the north offers Soli a deal. She will melt the ice in his sister's heart, and in return he will allow her to return to the snowy mountain." The offer was very tempting, but could she trust him? He will use it as long as he needs it. And when the need dries up, he will be able to kill as if nothing had happened. However, the general she had already gotten to know was not like that. He is a loving older brother who cares for his sister and is certainly a person who is capable of showing kindness. He, as the only one in the north, was a garden blooming from an unknown warmth, and Sola accepted the deal. But she had a condition. She asked to stop pursuing all the yokai of the Snow Mountain, including her. Do-hyun countered that monsters were attacking residents and he couldn't stand by. Yes, I know, but it's not the Snow Mountain yokai that are doing this. The attackers are more like evil spirits, the girl replied. She and her kind do not kill people without reason, because they originally coexisted alongside them. If people didn't attack first, everyone would live their own lives, everything would be fine as long as people don't invade their mountain, and the prince would deal with the evil spirits himself. Do-hyun expressed agreement on this matter. And although they seemed to have reached an agreement, Sola had one more condition. Blushing, the girl said that she would like to hear an explanation regarding his attitude towards her. He behaves sometimes tenderly, sometimes coldly, and this greatly confuses the girl. If he doesn't like her, then he should just keep his distance. Sola was very embarrassed and doubted whether she had said it in vain, but she needed to know. It seems you misunderstood something. I don't feel any ill will towards you, Do-hyun answered softly. The girl was surprised by this answer, but the prince himself understood that she was waiting for an explanation for his harsh behavior after the wedding. I didn't want to give the palace new reasons to control her, the man replied, adding that if he had known she was a yokai, he wouldn't have married her. It's true, and I only agreed out of pity for your persistent attempts. Sola got angry. The general was surprised why she was angry, but the girl was not going to explain anything. He wondered why she was always being cunning, and she did it to hide her true nature. Although sometimes her behavior seemed cute to him, and Do-hyun himself blushed. But perhaps this is also part of her cunning. In any case, you are still my wife. Continue to hide who you are from others, the prince warned. The great general promises to grant a divorce only after she saves his sister. Sola married a northern general who mercilessly exterminated yokai, and now he has learned her true face. However, they are still husband and wife to each other, and how can you tell what kind of relationship they have? To say her next words, Seola took a step towards him, and now Do-hyun felt embarrassed by her closeness. I ask you again to take good care of me, my dear husband, the girl said tenderly, accepting the rules of the game. Do-hyun, who didn't expect such behavior from her, blushed deeply. Don't stand so close. The prince turned away, and the girl assumed it was because of the cold emanating from her. Ms. Dohei is in the palace now, the girl asked, adding that he couldn't just get there. The prince replied directly that he had no reason for this, discouraging the girl with his straightforwardness. Sola turned around and intoned that he had no plan to save the princess, causing the general to become angry at her manner of speaking. It's hard to believe that I'm helping you again, Sola said, and the last word hit him like a pebble. The girl was quite optimistic. If there was no reason to get into the palace, then they would create one themselves. Therefore, as Mrs. Sola said, you wish to personally greet His Majesty, they asked the northern prince and his wife, which the girl confirmed with a smile. The ladies of the court said that the newlyweds did not have to go to the capital, but Solha insisted that they could not do so. Even though they live far in the north, as newlyweds, they must show their respect. According to customs and traditions, the girl added enthusiastically. The ladies of the court still did not agree, insisting that the long journey would tire the gentlemen, and the ladies themselves would be uncomfortable with their presence, and then Do-hyun brought up his final argument. My wife is sick, the local doctor couldn't help, we're going to Hanyang for treatment, he said. And then he gently took the girl by the hand and added that a husband is obliged to take care of his wife. Sola's heart skipped a beat in delight, and hearts almost appeared in her eyes, but the prince whispered to his wife not to look at him like that. The great general cares about me so much, he doesn't believe me, even though I insist that it's just a cold. The girl coughed embarrassedly. While the negotiations continued, Solha's maids watched what was happening with disbelief. What a snow yokai with a cold. Do-hyun had another argument. He would like to give a gift. A chest of gold appeared in front of the ladies of the court, and the prince himself said that they would only bow to the king, find a cure, and immediately return. There was nothing wrong with that. The last argument worked like a charm, and the ladies reluctantly noted that it would only happen once, much to Sola's delight. Great, now we can go to Hanyang. As expected, the bribe helped. Solha exhaled when they went outside. Do-hyun only agreed monosyllabically, and the girl got angry. She raised such a ruckus and only hears this from him. The man tried to calm her down and also warned her that the palace was more dangerous than the northern lands, so she needed to be careful. The prince was worried that if he could recognize the yokai in her, then others could too. "Ha! Didn't I do this because you promised protection? I should have just left you to be eaten by that yokai," Sola replied irritably. To which the prince replied that he could have managed it himself. But to his surprise, his wife asked him to help her since he was so worried about it. "We are going to Hanyang together. If you really take my side, I will also seriously be on your side," the girl said. At the last words, she blushed and looked away. Do-hyun looked at his wife, mesmerized, not knowing what to say. And then he revealed that she was going to be cunning like a fox again, making her angry again. "You're more of a gumiho than a snow yokai. You're always cheating. You can expect anything from a wife like that," Do-hyun said, but his words sounded completely harmless. The girl responded by promising to take his liver, even if she wasn't a fox, to which her husband asked her to calm down since he was joking, but she didn't understand how anyone could joke about it. "Mr. Juno, don't worry, I can handle it myself." The little maid objected a little further away, but the prince's assistant sincerely wanted to help her. Seeing this scene, Sola asked if Juno would go with them. His Highness answered in the affirmative, but the girl did not understand whether, even though the prince had been betrayed, he was still taking him with him. Do-hyun replied that his family had been taken hostage, and the girl just sighed. He was being attentive as always. "You think I'm that understanding?" Do-hyun asked, and Sola hiccuped in surprise as if he had read her thoughts. Not all relationships in the world end so abruptly. Everything is much more complicated than it seems. That's why he keeps her close to him. "Aren't I with you for your sister's sake?" the girl asked. Do-hyun replied that it was for that reason too. But how could one break a marriage bond? "If everything goes well, we can live together until the end of our days." Having said this, the prince turned slightly, and a slight smile lit up his lips. For a moment, the girl's heart skipped a beat, and she froze, amazed by this sight. "This is also a joke, I won't fall for it." Sola got angry the next moment. But the man was serious. He reminded her that last time she asked if he loved her, and he wanted to think everything through carefully before giving an answer. And indeed, what a fool! The words of the great general, and in general such behavior, really got on her nerves, which Sola immediately reported. "Miss Sola, everything is ready for departure. Mr. Juno helped us," the satisfied maid girls reported. The great general asked his assistant to look after the girls because only they knew their true nature. Juno responded by thanking the general for giving him a chance. As she sat down in the palanquin, Sola understood that the general was right in any case. The palace is even more hostile to yokai, and as a yokai, she must be especially careful. For their own benefit or in the interests of their families, those who are ready for anything gather here. This is a place where even a person should be wary of everything. Sola has a task to do to help Mrs. Doha. If this happens, their game of being husband and wife will be over. If everything goes well, will they be able to live together until the end of their days? "Until the end of our days," Sola repeated quietly with some hope in her voice. Come to think of it, this is the first time she's left the north, and it's actually quite curious what she'll encounter. "General Do-hyun is on his way to the palace," a majestic voice asked. In response, they confirmed to him that this was so, and asked what he would order them to do. "So I will see my brother again. I am very curious what he has become." The fair-haired man on the throne smiled sincerely. The current king is General Do-hyun's cousin. After the death of the great general's father, his younger brother ascended the throne, but soon died of illness. Having inherited the throne, the king gathered his strongest supporters. Next to him were 5 shamans: fire, water, air, darkness, and a shaman who controlled the forces of the earth. They come from families that inherited abilities from the celestial beings who descended from the firmament to assist the first ruler. It is said that although their main task is to assist the king, they influence all aspects of the country's governance. The royal court claims that there can be no alliance between humans and yokai. In short, if they are caught, it's the end. The main goal is to survive and leave as soon as possible to help Princess Doha. Sola was distracted from her heavy thoughts by the prince's voice. "Wife, come out, we have arrived at the palace." "Come in one by one," the guard's rough voice commanded the people who wanted to enter the palace grounds quite effectively. Sola looked closely at the gate and thoughtfully said that this was definitely not the main gate. Why didn't the great general go through the front gate? The prince suggested that she go through the main gate alone, since that's what she wanted. It's best to try not to attract unnecessary attention. Observing a pompous ceremony could interfere with their plans. This is the royal palace, and the eyes and ears of the sovereign are everywhere, so Sola should also be more careful. The young people had already approached the gates, where they greeted General Do-hyun with respect. As Sola expected, she saw a multitude of yukai detection spells inside, and if it weren't for the pouch of incense, they would have been discovered immediately. As soon as they safely passed the security post, the girl asked where they were going now, but the general did not have time to answer. "Uncle, how have you been?" A fair-haired boy ran towards them, with the court nannies barely keeping up with him. Do-hyun didn't expect the crown prince to know about his arrival, and the boy replied that Choi Sang-gun had told him about it. The crown prince also heard that the general had married, and he was sorry that he could not congratulate him personally. "Your Highness, I greet you," Sola greeted, and the boy, slightly tensing, formally greeted the Pubuin, the title for the general's wife. Smiling, the girl asked His Highness to speak to her informally, but the boy replied that it would be wrong. "This child will one day become the king of this country, Crown Prince Iryong. He is Prince Do-hyun's nephew, but do they have a good relationship?" Thinking this way, Seolha replied that such a warm greeting is an immeasurable favor to her. "Uncle has always taken great care of me and always given me a warm welcome in the north," the crown prince replied. And Sola was surprised that he had been there, and the boy replied that it was very interesting for him to be there. "I am grateful to you for your kind attitude towards me, and this time I have come to express my respect to you," Do-hyun said respectfully, but very softly. The crown prince was overjoyed to see his uncle and asked how long they had been staying. The northern general expressed a desire to greet the emperor, and the boy volunteered to escort the guests, which did not please the teacher accompanying him, who assured him that it was time for His Highness to return to his studies. Sola watched in surprise as the boy was eager to spend more time with his uncle, while the servants insisted otherwise. She remembered that sometimes the lands at the foot of the snowy mountain were just as noisy. It turned out that this was due to the visits of His Highness. The crown prince is either stupid or simply naive, and the northern general, oddly enough, did not touch his nephew in such a situation. She would have taken him hostage. Well, his sister was taken away, so he can't do anything, but it's all so complicated. A little to the side, the maids were whispering, discussing the return of the northern general after so many years. Whether in the north or in Hanyang, it is the same everywhere, but there is one difference. It's much hotter here. Sola expected it to be warmer than on the snowy mountain, but this is too much. "Ms. Sola, is everything all right?" Juno asked, noticing her tense state, and the girl complained to him about the heat. Tochi and Chogi were also languishing from the heat and wondered if there was some kind of magic that would help them get used to this hell. While the girl was dreaming of coolness, she suddenly felt a light breath of wind. Droplets of water floated past Solha, bringing with them the much-desired freshness. Magical passes that are the most beautiful. The movements are free and flexible. The magic is like a dance. It is impossible to look away when you see this dance. This is the magic of the water shaman, Sola realized with surprise. "Your Highness," the girl greeted, enveloped in the tiniest drops of water, bringing with her a sense of coolness. The crown prince was delighted with the girl's magic, and she bowed gratefully. Iron also said that his uncle had arrived and that they were going to his father together. I, Ryu Hwasong, greet the northern general and his wife, the head of the Ryu clan, who wields water magic, introduced herself solemnly. She informed him that His Majesty was in a meeting with the clan heads and they could greet him before the meeting began. "You came to Hanyang for this purpose." The girl's face was completely expressionless, unlike Solhi, who tried to smile back. Ryu Hwasong asked the guests to follow her. She would guide them, and asked if the crown prince would go with them. There was no reason to refuse. His Majesty would like it too. And while the head of the clan spoke, Sola could not help but notice her amazing calm. If you think about it, the Ice Clan originated from the Water Clan. Although it now exists only nominally and has long since fallen into decline, water and ice, everyone will look at her as Ryu Hwasong's relative. Sola thought the head of the Water Clan would ask her about her family, but it seems she is not interested. "Wife, please concentrate, don't get distracted," Do-hyun said quietly. The girl was surprised. She calmly followed him, but the general pinched her on the cheek and told her to think about meeting the king. In response to his wife's words that she would simply bow and express her gratitude, Do-hyun chuckled skeptically. This may lull the sovereign's vigilance, but with the heads of clans the situation is different. Finally, they arrived at the emperor's chambers and Hwaseong knocked, asking permission to enter. As soon as Sola stepped after the head of the water clan, she froze in surprise. Such a majestic view opened up to her in the center of the room. On a dais sat the emperor, and in front of him, in a semicircle, stood the heads of the clans, and all eyes were directed at her. The emperor noticed with a smile that she had finally arrived, referring to the head of the water clan. And then he noticed his son, who also blossomed at the sight of his father. "General Do-hyun greets you, Your Majesty. How are you, the Northern Prince?" Without wasting any time, respectfully dropped to one knee. Seola immediately sat down next to her husband, listening to the emperor greet Do-hyun in a rather friendly and family-like manner. All she could do for now was look at the sovereign from the corner of her eye. Do-hyun, the former crown prince who was disqualified from the throne, and the king who succeeded his usurping father. The king noticed that it was a great joy that Do-hyun got married and asked what his wife's name was, and then Solha introduced herself. "I heard that you are the last of the line of ice shamans, but they say you cannot use magic," the sovereign asked, causing the girl to blush in embarrassment. Yes, news travels very quickly at court, but putting a smile on her face, she had to agree with it. It would be better not to lie that she doesn't have magic before she could even speak. She was already in trouble. "So, let's see, the Ice Shaman clan was one of the branches of the Water clan," the king said to Hwaseong, and he concluded that Solha and Ryu Hwasong were distant relatives, which is what the girl had assumed. In an act of hospitality, the king asked the Water clan to take care of Do-hyun's wife, and they promised to fulfill his request. As soon as the king finished speaking, an overly sweet voice was heard. "Long time no see, great general." "It's still cold in the north," the head of the flower clan, Hwa-ran, asked with a broad smile. "It's only natural," Hwa-ran, the head of the dark clan, Am-chu-hyun, answered her instead of the general. Hwa-ran, displeased at being interrupted, reproached Ju-hyun for not even greeting the guests properly. "You work hard to protect the northern territories, General." Pyo-aken, the head of the Wind clan, joined the conversation. "This is the first time we've all met like this," added the head of the Fire clan, Yom-won. All the clan heads speak as if they are worried about Do-hyun's well-being, but in reality they are wary of him. His sudden invasion of their world clearly does not please the clan leaders. "Ms. Dohye is doing well," one of the leaders suddenly said, and another shaman echoed her. "You'll be able to see her before you leave," Hwa-ran added with a smile, and the head of the Shadow clan added without a shadow of a doubt that they would probably be leaving soon, since they couldn't leave the north unattended. And only Do-hyun listened to all this silently. Sola wondered what he would answer them about this, how he would act. After all, the general found himself in a situation where he couldn't say a word. He is now in a very difficult situation and understands this better than anyone. "I heard that Miss Dohye's condition has worsened. I will see her and then leave immediately, Your Majesty," General Do-young said. The king agreed with a smile, but only for one day. At this time, the crown prince reminded his father that a reception would soon be held at the palace. "How about inviting General Do-yun and his wife?" the boy asked formally, but with great hope in his voice. The king liked his words. Do-hyun rarely gets to come. It would be wrong to just let them go, and it seems the crown prince is very attached to them. There were 5 days left before the banquet, and the sovereign ordered that housing be prepared for the guests for this time, which surprised Solha, wondering if he really loved his son so blindly. Am-chu-hyun countered that the great general had obligations in the north. "Let's spend this beautiful day together. Why are you so stern?" The head of the Fire clan interrupted him with a smile. Even the king told Am-chu-hyun to calm down, since the northern troops were strong in themselves, and nothing would happen during the general's absence. Then the emperor wished the general a good time, and Sola was confused. Had she not come only to meet with Madame Dohye? "Thank you for your kindness," the girl answered embarrassedly, feeling angry in her soul about where else she had ended up. After the audience with the king, Seola and Do-hyun went to Lady Dohye's chambers. The girl was glad that it was finally over, but she still felt uncomfortable because of the heat. "I thought you could easily get them through, but you did it with me," the man noted, removing a white petal from her hair. Sola froze from such an unexpectedly affectionate action on his part and awkwardly noted that the situations were, of course, similar. Of course, however, I exposed you, Do-hyun chuckled. The girl got a little angry and blushed, how irritating the northern general was sometimes. But then a joyful cry was heard. "Brother, my God, you really have arrived." A young lady was hurrying towards them. She immediately rushed to Do-hyun because she missed him very much. The man himself also opened his arms and immediately asked if her husband was home. He went hunting with his friends. The great general's younger sister answered with a smile. Seeing her, Sola immediately thought about how to help her without revealing herself. "I'm so glad we finally met." Do-hyo rushed towards her brother's wife. And with the most sincere smile, she asked to take care of her brother. "You are definitely brother and sister." Sola was taken aback, noting how different they were in both appearance and character. "That's why you came here," the princess exclaimed after a while. She was genuinely grateful that they had come here for her, but Sola was shocked at how easily she had accepted it. In response to the reasonable question of why she was not surprised, Do-hye replied that she trusted her brother's words and, besides, they were trying to help her. "I've never seen a yokai before and I thought they were scary creatures," the girl began warily. And she ended by saying that she thought Mrs. Solha was very friendly, which again left her dumbfounded. Because of the curse, Do-hye's health was undermined from childhood. It was difficult for her to walk for a long time, let alone run. Compared to last time, she is much better, but still, both her brother and she hope for a full recovery. "You personally came to cleanse my heart of ice, isn't that a sign of kindness?" The girl smiled. Still not believing that they were really brother and sister, because the girl was like a ray of sunshine, Sola asked to check her pulse first. Taking Do-hye's hand, Sola closed her eye and used her magic. But after a couple of moments, she opened her eyes in surprise, realizing what she had just learned. "It will be difficult to remove the ice right away. It looks like the lady is pregnant," Sola said. Both Do-hyun and Do-hye were very surprised by her words. The general insistently asked his wife to check again, to which Sola confidently replied that she had heard 2 heartbeats, neither of whom had noticed the general's sister's pensive state. "Oh my God, that's why I always feel so sleepy," Do-hye laughed happily. The girls began to discuss how Do-hye's husband didn't know about it either, and would be very surprised, but Do-hyung was interested in why the ice couldn't be broken. Sola replied that if a spell is cast or removed during pregnancy, it also affects the fetus. This is exactly how the lady herself suffered in the past. She can slow down the spell now, but trying to remove it completely is dangerous for both of them. Do-hyun reminded them that they had to leave for the north immediately after the banquet ended, so they need to find a reason to stay. "But is it possible?" Sola asked, and the general thoughtfully replied that it would not be easy. Their conversation was interrupted by a maid with the message that the second minister had sent a servant. The second minister invites the great general and his wife to dinner. Mr. Kwon Hyun-suk, the second minister, laughed heartily, delighted that those present were praising the food on the table with all their might. The table was indeed very rich and fully laden with a variety of food. Sola ate quietly, realizing that the minister was already drunk. But did he really invite them just to boast about his position? "You like it too," the minister said to Solha, and she had to politely answer that everything was very tasty. The minister, like a good host, asked the guests to eat more, as they must have been hungry after the long journey, but Sola was only thinking about how long this lunch was taking. Meanwhile, a young woman appeared in the room, and the minister was glad to see her. "Greetings, I hope everyone enjoyed the treat," asked the young girl. Seeing her, Sola was very surprised. Could this almost child really be the minister's wife? What a shameless fellow. The second minister suddenly remembered that he had obtained a rare orchid and, ignoring his own wife, wanted to bring it to show, while the young girl, like a servant, continued to serve the table. "Ms. Jong-gyung is so diligent, isn't she?" the guests said, noting that she had to try hard. Many years have passed since her family died in a fire. She was left alone, so she married an old minister. The guests laughingly said that they wouldn't have agreed to it even for 500 sacks of rice, but Ryu Hwaseong, sitting right there, didn't take part in these conversations. "Oh, everyone's gossiping about each other again," Sola whispered, and the general replied that it was always like that here. And then the girl suggested leaving, and for the first time, Do-hyun agreed with her. Sola got angry at his teasing and said that she would go to the restroom before leaving. She calmly walked out of the room, not noticing the Water Clan leader's intense gaze. Once outside, Sola stretched tiredly. It was hot, boring, and there were so many people around she missed the snowy mountains so much. While looking for a restroom, the girl thought about how they could stay in the palace longer. Maybe they would find a good excuse. Passing by one of the nooks and crannies, Sola was surprised to notice something she shouldn't have seen. Right in front of her stood the young wife of the second minister in the arms of a young man. After going to the toilet, Sola returned to the room again, where she was informed that the great general was waiting for her outside. Having decided to take her leave in that case, Sola overheard the guests discussing tomorrow's archery competition, which Ms. Jongyong would also attend. "Oh my God, you're going to a competition tomorrow," the girl turned around with a smile. She decided that the more information the better, and she definitely had to become friends with these two, so she asked to join them. However, the women present only laughed, and then began to say that the lady was tired after the trip. Sola laughed tensely. This was more difficult than she thought. "I think that's a good idea. Don't you agree?" Ryu Huaxiong asked. No one present dared to object to Ms. Huaxiong. Therefore, everyone agreed that Mrs. Sola could come tomorrow. The noble ladies immediately caved in as soon as the head of the shaman family said a word. "Oh, thank you. I'll definitely come." Sola smiled feignedly. Now she had one trump card in her hands, a young and fragile woman, the wife of the second minister. How could Sola take advantage of her weakness? Another arrow whistled and hit the target. To hit several times in a row, that's incredible, great general. There were enthusiastic cries. Sola rushed towards her husband with a joyful cry. But Do-yun became indignant that this competition was only for women, so why did it become an event for couples? "It's obvious that I'm the most beautiful and successful, so they brought husbands with them out of envy." As if nothing had happened, Do-yun asked her what her plans were for today, and she realized that he didn't agree with her words. She needed to find a way to be alone with Yong-kyung and do what she had talked about yesterday. Sola will suggest, for example, going hunting on horseback. The main thing is to find the right moment. A little to the side, the same minister was boasting to his guests about his bow, which had been made by an overseas master. His boasting was interrupted by an arrow whistling right in front of the minister's face. Seola's mouth dropped open in shock, thinking her husband was crazy, but Do-hyun simply replied that the moment had come and it was time for her to go. While everyone around groaned and the general apologized for missing, Sola hurried to Jonggyong, asking for a minute. The girls moved away from the crowd, and Sola said that she needed to discuss something with her. "You saw everything. Yesterday you noticed me," asked Jonggyong, surprising the general's wife. Sola was surprised that she was very smart, while the minister's wife asked not to tell her husband. "Yesterday my head was spinning. I leaned against him for a moment. If the gentleman misunderstands, he will be very angry," the girl continued to say, "and if the minister finds out, he will definitely kill that man." She was worried. "I understand that you are not cheating on your husband," Sola interrupted her. "The ring that Jonggyong is wearing now is not hers. It is large and old, probably belonged to one of her parents. After the fire she got married and lived alone in the house, her husband, to cope. You relied on this man. He's not a stranger to you, is he?" Sola smiled. In preparation for this competition, the general's wife found out about the relatives of the minister's young wife. There were rumors about a prosperous family with an only daughter. The master had a son born from a slave. His origin was hidden. That man, said to be Miss Jonggyong's half-brother, appears to be hiding burn marks after surviving a fire. Since they are from different backgrounds, she cannot recognize him as a brother, but not wanting to lose him, she got him a job in the house as a servant. "Well, isn't that so?" Sola asked, and Jong-kyung immediately asked in return whether she would tell the gentleman. Brother Young-kyung is her only connection to the outside world since she lives locked up here. Since childhood, he was the only one who treated her like family. She barely survived, and she cannot lose everything so easily again. "I'll do anything," please. Jonggyong's voice trembled. But Sola replied that she had misunderstood her, and there was no need for her to tell her. "I thought about staying in the palace, threatening to expose the affair, but after learning the truth, I put those thoughts aside. Instead, I instructed my man to conduct an investigation," the girl added. Tochi and Chogi turned into animals and entered the minister's chambers. It seems that the second minister was very greedy, but at the same time very pedantic, since he kept records of the embezzlement of the treasury in secret expense books. People won't take Sola's threats seriously because she's too beautiful. Therefore, the minister will talk privately with her husband, which is what was happening right now. You have taken too much for yourself. If the emperor finds out, both you and your family will lose their lives. There is a reason why I summoned you separately, Doyon said to the minister, who fell to his knees. Heeding his pleas, the general agreed to let him go, but so that he would not forget that everything was known. But at the same time, he understood that this woman was in no hurry to use the first opportunity that came her way. She understood who had a real weak spot, and this person was in his hands. If you want to kill me to cover this up, go ahead and try it, Do-hyun said. She's a yokai that everyone hunts, and she acts so brazenly. Isn't she scared? What is she even hoping for? I personally send you the heads of the people you send. The northern general had his final say on the matter. Meanwhile, Seola revealed what she really wants from Sung Kyung. Mutual assistance, I want to become your friend? The girl smiled. It seems that Lady Song Kyung is very far from the local courtiers, and in this they are similar, so wouldn't it be better for them to act together rather than alone? Secretly communicating with her brother, the only one who supported her in the palace, and being caught doing it, Lady Jonggyung was in despair. However, instead of threats, she heard a promise not to reveal her secret and an offer of friendship. It was impossible to simply brush this aside. The second minister will somehow find a reason to keep them in the palace, and by getting closer to Jonggyung Seolha, he will be able to sort out palace affairs more quickly. It was like killing two birds with one stone, and in her joy the girl took Song Kyung's hand, saying that it was time for them to go back. On the way back, Sola asked her new friend to informally call her big sister, assuring her that she really was older than her. They soon returned to the rest of the competitors, and Solha only hoped she had done enough. They were greeted by Ryu Hwaseong, who noticed Ms. Solhe's good mood. The girl was embarrassed, and Ryu Hwaseong added that, nevertheless, nothing would come of it. "That's not a good enough reason to stay here," said the head of the water shamans. Sola was taken aback, but her attempts to find out what the lady was talking about were interrupted by Do-hyun's return. Those around him were curious about what the general was talking about with the second minister, as he seemed quite irritated, but Do-hyun casually replied that it was just an exchange of pleasantries. He immediately went to his wife and asked if she had shot well. But it was Solha's turn to shoot, and the girl picked up a bow. She had already tried to shoot from something like this before, but now she was noticeably nervous. She needed to communicate with people without showing off her talent. "Wife, I'll help you a little." Do-hyun found himself in close proximity to Seolhi and even touched her hands, helping her with the shooting. Taking advantage of the moment, the young people whispered to each other about the results of their missions. The girl was a little angry that they were discussing this now, and she was also unnerved by the man's closeness. Do-hyun reassured her that he was just pretending to help, but Sola didn't understand what was so difficult about it. She could demonstrate good shooting herself. Focus on the goal, stand firmly, feet shoulder-width apart, feel the wind, calm your breathing. Slowly, very slowly, pull the bowstring. The girl's heart sank and then began to beat faster. Do-hyun was too close. She could feel his breath on her skin. From the outside, the two young people looked like a couple caressing each other. Those who were particularly impressionable might even think that they were kissing. There was a sharp sound of an arrow being released, followed by cries of delight, right on target, and these two were so perfect for each other. The gossips immediately picked up the pretext for conversation. The great general no longer seemed as formidable to them as he had been rumored to be. They recalled that he came to Hanyang because his wife was ill and to see his sister. The ladies of the court were worried in vain that a conflict would flare up, but everything was relatively calm. But Sola was worried about the phrase they had thrown out about being right on target, and what if everything was actually not like that? The next day, the newlyweds went out into the street together. "Wife, you haven't rested yet. Wouldn't it be better to stay at home?" The great general was perplexed, allowing her to hold him by the elbow. "It seems like my condition has improved since arriving in Hanyang." Solha smiled sweetly, holding her husband's arm firmly but tenderly. Her thoughtful behavior immediately bore fruit in the form of admiring glances from the court gossips. Those around them were enthusiastically interested in where such a loving couple had come from in the palace. "I'll have to do this until steam comes out of my ears," Do-hyun asked Seola quietly, pressing her to himself. Last night in Mrs. Doya's chambers, Sola announced that they needed to become a perfect couple. Do-hyun didn't understand what she was talking about, so Solha repeated it back to him almost word for word. She recalled how the ladies admired them at the competition and how they were at a loss from excitement. No matter how much they threatened the minister, something more convincing was needed, a reason to stay in the palace, and even Dohye became interested in what Pubuin was planning. The feeling of compassion, I'm going to use it to change the way they treat us, Sola replied. General elder brother must stay here for the sake of his sick sister. The general husband wants to leave his beloved wife in warm Hanyang. Compassion and envy, that's all, the girl concluded. And now, as they walked down the street together, Do-hyun noticed that it didn't seem to be helping. But Sola was sure of the opposite. They had swallowed the bait, and now their couple was looked at differently, with different eyes, seeing a love story and a tragedy. The general had previously warned that all attention in the palace would be focused on them. Well, let's grab their full attention and charm them. The girl looked very determined. Unable to look at her, Do-hyun turned away. Her behavior really did puzzle him, to which the girl became indignant, saying that she was helping him. That's not what I mean. Sometimes you're too pushy. The man's cheeks turned red. Sola didn't understand what he was talking about and asked what that expression was, but the general announced that they had already arrived. I definitely saw the blush. The girl grinned, which made the man angry and hurry her up. Do-hyun was the first to climb the stairs to the entrance of the pharmacy, warning his wife to be careful. It was quite quiet inside and there was a strong smell of medicinal herbs, but this is where Dohye buys his medicine. Sola confirmed that this was what the lady had said, but she was very bothered by the musty smell, as if the room was not ventilated. Besides the smell, the girl didn't like something else, but she couldn't figure out what. Stop, something's wrong. The general also stopped, sensing something was wrong. He shouted loudly for anyone to come out, but Sola quietly noticed that there were no people there. Because it was an evil spirit and its now silent victims. The fact that an evil spirit was calmly walking around the palace alarmed and unpleasantly surprised both of them. After all, evil spirits follow only instincts, they do not possess reason or the ability to think. The evil spirit is not able to think about hiding its smell like Solha, so how did it manage to get into the palace? It is impossible unless it was helped. It looks like he ate all the healers, Do-hyun noted, drawing his sword and preparing to deal with it. But Sola was worried that if there was a noise, people would definitely come and say that it was their fault. But there was no other way, and besides, the evil spirit attacked them first. We have an uninvited guest. A familiar voice rang out and fiery magical signs appeared in the air. It was the fire shaman Yeom-won, and he used his magic against the evil spirit. Haha, to attack first. How impudent! The head of the fire clan furiously attacked the enemy and quickly burned him. A choking smoke spread through the room, and the general and his wife began to cough. Yeom-won apologized, who would have thought that something like this would happen in a pharmacy, but he also noticed that the gentlemen were not very surprised. They looked calmly at both the yukai and the corpses. The general, in turn, was surprised at what brought Yeom-won there, and he, to Solhe's bewilderment, said that he would like to discuss something with the two of them. I would like to propose an alliance to you, what do you say? The young man smiled. Dong-hyun asked him what he was talking about, and Yeom-won repeated that he was suggesting that they be on the same side. However, Sola considered his proposal to be very strange. If the heads of the shaman clans aren't on the king's side, then whose side is Yeom-won on? Your words may be misunderstood, Mr. Yeom-won, the girl remarked, her whole appearance hinting at the possibility of betrayal. Yeom-won was not at all embarrassed and confirmed that the shaman clan served the sovereign, but that was now in the past. And the recent incident is further confirmation of this. For a yokai to appear in the palace, the place had to have changed dramatically, and there would also be a split in the shaman clans. I'm not asking for an answer right now. You both need time to think it over. The fire shaman was no longer smiling. However, he would like the general and the Pubuin to realize that they all need change. In any case, I'll sort this out myself. Let's pretend you didn't see it. The smile and playful mood returned to the fire shaman. In addition, the young man noticed an unusual aroma emanating from the Pubuin. Yeom-won has a keen sense of smell and can distinguish scents well, so he guessed that the lady was carrying a pouch of incense with her. Sola replied with an embarrassed smile that it was a gift, so she didn't know for sure, but she understood that the flowers in it were very rare, and their aroma was extremely unusual for people. The situation in the palace is more complicated than I thought, Sola remarked as they returned to Do-hye's chambers, and Do-hyun was surprised that the clans were divided. Then the girl asked what about the alliance, whether the general wanted to conclude it, but he did not really want to interfere in politics. "I just wish for a peaceful life," the man said. Sola had noticed before that he showed no interest in the affairs of the palace. But no matter how removed from power he is, shouldn't he at least know what's going on? Dohyun assumed that Princess Dohye knew, and then Seola suggested asking her. However, the general noticed that his sister hardly ever spoke to him about politics and did not want to give rise to unwanted rumors. If she had been careless, she could have been accused of treason. Suddenly, the general suggested that Solhae talk to Dohye herself. It seemed that his sister really liked her. Dohyun needed to go because the crown prince was looking for her, so he asked his wife to give Dohyun some medicine. "By the way, try to persuade the crown prince to let you stay in the palace," the girl shouted joyfully after him, greatly embarrassing the man. Left alone, Sola exhaled. It was quite difficult in the palace, even though she was prepared, but first she needed to go to Princess Doha. The girl walked calmly, immersed in her thoughts, and everything around was calm, but even the walls have ears. "It seems like Yeom-won has already made the first move. It's time for us to take action too," Hwa-ran asked. And her interlocutor replied that there was no need to rush yet. The moment would come soon, and for now they would just observe. There was still time before the holiday. "Time will tell what is best to do with them," the king said calmly. Meanwhile, Sola met the princess in her garden. In any case, the palace is no longer what it used to be, of course. Intrigues have always been woven here, but this is the first time that discord has arisen among the heads of the shaman clans, Dohye said. A split occurred between the 5 shamans. Sola noted that each clan had to think about its own benefit, so this could very well happen, but Dohye noted that shaman clans were different from aristocratic families. The 5 families were to follow the will of their ancestors, serve only the king and protect him. As time passed and generations changed, disagreements began to arise, and the situation has now worsened. The biggest changes occurred in the fire clan, the Yam family. The sun god gave power to the first king. Fire magic, most similar to it, is the most powerful among the 5 clans. The Yom family has always been first in serving the king, but Yeom-won's father, the previous head of the clan, chose a different path. Therefore, at the moment the clans are divided into 3 factions. The families that still support the royal power are the Water, Dark, and Flower clans. The Fire clan is dissatisfied with the current royal family. The Wind clan themselves are few in number and can be considered a neutral party. They have been outside of politics for a long time. Sola thought, it seems like Yeom-won proposed an alliance because he doesn't have enough supporters. Forming an alliance in such a situation would be perceived as treason against the king. It is said that there is an intention to overthrow the current king and appoint the next ruler, Crown Prince Iryung or the great general Doyeon. Iryung is too young, he is the direct heir of the current king, so General Doyeon would be the ideal choice. The palace must have a justification for its actions. If the Yeom-won clan proposed an alliance, it had good reasons to do so. Whether it is an event or a person, this means that the palace will have a reason. "Brother takes good care of you," Doye's voice brought Sola out of her thoughts. She added with a smile that the general may seem rude, but he is a surprisingly kind man. It's hard for him to show his feelings, that's why he speaks so harshly. The princess exhaled, and Sola thanked her for this information. But this is the result of a painful life experience. A brother and sister who lost their parents, while still children, found themselves in a huge palace where nothing depended on them. "Because of this, my older brother matured early," the girl said sadly. But then she smiled, happily adding that it seemed like he liked the pubyen. Sola hiccuped in fear. How could this be? But the princess was sure that she could not be deceived in this. "You love him too, right?" This question made Sola blush. To hide her embarrassment, Solha laughed and said that she simply couldn't resist the general's threats. But Doha didn't believe it, because Tochichogi said that the lady was very strong. "The problem is that the great general is stronger," Soli had to admit through gritted teeth. Yes, a great general is one who can survive even in the north and easily exterminate Yukai. She does this only to save lives, her own and the inhabitants of the snowy mountain. Sola hates him for bringing her to such a dangerous place, but when she sees the great general, when she hears him call her his wife, at such moments she doesn't want to feel only hatred. Just a little bit, Sola answered the princess's question and tried her best not to blush. One must clearly distinguish between compassion and love. She also asked the general's sister not to tell him anything, and at that moment, another person approached them. "There you are, my dear. I was wondering where you had disappeared to," smiled Princess Doya's husband, Ho Jio. The young man politely greeted Solka and introduced himself. And only then did he turn to his wife, worrying whether she was okay and whether she could go for a walk. Sola admired this sweet, perfect couple. It was obvious that he had married the princess in order to take care of her, but then Ho Jio turned to Lady Sola. Outside, Mr. Am Ju-hyun was waiting for Solhu. The girl hurried out and immediately asked what his business was. "I heard that you are staying at Mrs. Doe's house. You probably arrived in a hurry and won't be able to prepare your outfit for the holiday. Can I help you?" The shaman immediately got down to business. Sola was confused, but the guest asked her not to worry and to feel comfortable. "They say the Am clan is on the king's side. There must be a reason why he is seeking rapprochement." The girl thanked him for his concern, but she had already found someone who would sew her clothes. And although Am Ju-hyun insisted, Solha refused because she couldn't immediately agree with Joy. How could she know what he had in mind? Tochi and Chogi watched from around the corner as the guest said goodbye and left, and they also heard the entire conversation. And as soon as the shaman left, the girls found themselves next to the lady, and they asked in bewilderment whether she had really found a tailor, to which Sola had to answer that no, but she needed to find one. "This is a royal reception, you can't ignore it." She wondered where she should look for a tailor, and came to the conclusion that she should look outside the palace, and then thoughtfully asked how big the Hanyang market was.